have Evan Patton from App Inventor coming up. He's the lead software engineer for App Inventor. And you want to tell us what you'll be talking about and how it's related?
All right. Am I on? OK, perfect. Yes, so it's great that I'm coming right after that discussion, because I'm going to share with you a little bit about a project we've been working on at MIT called Aptly. So just to get started, I think most people in the room and probably online are familiar with App Inventor, but I'll start with a little background. Then I'm going to talk about generative AI in 3 slides. And then I'd like to talk to you about Aptly and what we're planning for the future of this project. So for those of you who aren't familiar with App Inventor, it's basically a web-based platform for building your own mobile phone applications. You lay out your application in a designer view that's drag and drop, and then you use Blockly to program that application, and you can test it live right on your mobile device, and then you can compile the application and install it. App Inventor was actually a project started here at Google in 2008, and in 2011 it was spun off to MIT, where we've been shepherding it along for the past 12 years. And in fact, it was the inspiration for the development of Blockly when it was here at Google. We've had 18 million users, almost 19 million. It was 7,000 users short this morning when I checked it of saying 19 million. So everyone go on and create an account. And actually, the project numbers here is wrong. It's actually over 90 million now. So these slides were created a couple months ago, so they're a little out of date. And in May, I just checked, we had 1.4 million users, which is our peak month, because it's when all the CS exams and everything are. And we talk a lot on the team about computational thinking, but we're also really thinking about computational action, which is not just thinking about how you use computing, but how do you apply it to real-world problems that are going to have an effect on the lives of everyone around you. And we try to get people who use App Inventor to think about the applications they want to build at that level. So that's App Inventor. Now let's talk about generative AI, which, I mean, we just had a little discussion about it, and I'm sure you've all read about all these different models. So conceptually, generative AI is about taking a sequence of tokens and generating some output. So if I gave you the following sequence of tokens, what do you think the output's going to be? Anyone? That's yeah. Well, I was hoping you'd say world, and then I was going to subvert your expectations. But no, hello, Blockly, because context in all these models is important too, right? So we're at the Blockly Summit. We may want to have it say hello, Blockly, rather than hello, world. And the thing with these models is they're trained on a lot of data, right? So some of these models have upwards of 30 billion parameters or more. They're working on text, they're working on images. I went to DALL-E and put in computer eating the internet. This is what came up with. And of course, it's processing information at a speed that no human realistically would, right? So Wikipedia, I looked it up, was 4.3 billion words. If you read 1 word a second, it would take you 136 years. If you never ate, never slept, never did anything other than read Wikipedia. So they're processing a lot of information. And we want to try to leverage that in a way we can, and as best we can. Which, of course, with Blockly, we're talking about visual programming languages, that's really important. So aptly is our attempt to try to bridge the divide between blocks and generative code. So if someone could play the video, I think in the back.
We all know coding a software application is complex and requires time and experience. But what if instead anyone could make an app simply by talking to the computer? With Aptly, brought to you by the MIT App Inventor team, all you need to do is speak. It's as simple as describing what you want your app to do. Tell App Inventor I want to make an app.
Please give me a name for the app you want to make.
Call the app Translate.
Please describe the app you want to make.
Make an app that translates English text into one of 5 selected languages when a button is pressed.
Let me see what I can make for you.
Then, both the app name and description are populated into the code generator window. And with just the click of a button, my natural language description is transformed into a fully functional app. Just like any App Inventor app, I can navigate to the block screen and make any customizations or changes I would like. I can now translate from English to Spanish with ease. Building off the low-code, no-code movement, Aptly fundamentally changes the idea of what it means to create an app. Through the development of Aptly for App Inventor, we hope to enable and inspire anyone and everyone to make apps, regardless of their coding experience. So, what will you create with Aptly?
All right. Yeah, perfect. So that's Aptly in a nutshell. This is how it actually works technically. There's a bunch of different servers in the back that you don't see in that video, one of which is an Aptly server, which is interfacing with the large language model. It then will compute a sequence of changes to a project. We show just creating a project there, but it can also edit projects. And to do that, we use a real-time collaboration feature that we developed for App Inventor, which we generate the list of changes that have to happen to the Blockly workspace and then apply them so that you're getting these incremental updates to the project as you're working alongside the AI model. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of examples. This one was one of my favorites because it was given to us by one of our power users who's based in the Netherlands. And so this is the description in Dutch. We've never trained it on any language other than English. So, but because it's a large language model, it's seen text of Dutch and English, and it was actually able to come up with a similar program. But you'll note, for example, it has Dutch in the list and German in the list of languages, whereas if you looked at the video, those languages don't show up. So there's also some the contextual information there being used as part of the app generation. We're not sure why that is, but it is. You can add behaviors, right? So if I have a picture of a cat and the button's kitty.png and the sound is meow.mp3, when I say make the cat meow, when I click on it, it'll generate code like this. Of course, it's a non-deterministic model, right? So I can say make it bigger when I click on it. And sometimes it will multiply the width and the height by 2. Sometimes it'll add 10. Sometimes it'll add 50. If you don't tell it more specifically what you want, it'll guess. And that's sometimes fun to play around with. More recently, we've been trying to integrate the creation of content in addition to the coding. So we've been adding DALL-E as a feature here. And so you can say something like, replace the picture of a cat with one of a lion roaring in the middle of Times Square. It'll produce this code that you see at the bottom there, and then we will go and use that information to update the assets in the project as well, so you can use it to modify content. And just for fun here, I tried making a little game. It didn't go as well as I'd hoped, but I'll give you some of the good examples. So I said, create me a 2D platformer world in the style of DALL-E, and it came up with this little world area. And then I said, add a character that's a lizard with a space helmet, and it puts it up there. And so we can create sprites and things like that to put into this little game world. Of course, this is just doing the images here. I'm not also generating behavior, but that would be something you could add. Okay, but what about the future of Aptly? This is great for App Inventor, but what else can we do with this? So a couple things we're thinking about. One is increasing the ability to fine-tune this model and get better examples of what it can do. But also understanding, how do I look at this model in terms of what it's doing to my project, right? Maybe I disagree with the change it wants to make. And so we're trying to look at something like this is kind of inspired by git diff, right? Where you can see it's going to eliminate these 2 lines in red and add the 2 lines in green. But we also want to understand, could this be more generally applicable to Blockly as a whole? So this is just the standard playground for Blockly. But you'll note in the generator window in the bottom right, there's a new language called aptly, and that's the aptly code that's being generated in the background. And we designed it to look like Python, because we know there's a lot of Python code out there that's been trained on, and therefore we can leverage that. And what we can do here is we've come up with this little DSL to describe what the block looks like in terms of the aptly code. And so, for example, the if, else if, and else blocks all are areas of the block map to these different inputs. And this can create both a generator for producing the text and a parser that's capable of taking that text and turning it back into the blocks. And so this allows for the bidirectional nature that you need to do both the code and the blocks together using the large language model's generation capabilities. And so that's the future of what we're trying to do with Aptly, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay, any questions in the room? I see Mary Beth approaching the mic. We can start there.
Hey, can I use this today? Can I play with it?
Not quite. If you want, we can talk afterwards, and I can add you to the allowed list. Because we do have a server where you can play around with it if you're interested.
Is this does it use the blocks that MIT App Inventor already has? Like a human has created the blocks, or it also can make new blocks from thin air?
No, so right now the current version only uses the blocks that App Inventor provides. The newer stuff I was showing at the end there is more of a proof of concept right now, but the idea is that you could even for your own blocks in your own system define what it should look like in text, and then it should go back and forth. Eventually, maybe, yes, you could get an LLM to generate the block structure and then use that to recursively iterate with it.
We can put this into the block developer tools. You just tell the AI what you want your block to look like.
Yeah, potentially.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. I see another question in the room. How about Jamie over there?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm the UXR on the Google team. So my question for you is, I'd be curious to know your experiences testing this out with users, because the girl in the video, or the woman in the video, was very articulate with what she asked for, and thus had a very, the product very strongly resembled what she asked for.
Yes.
Have you seen if other users are able to articulate their idealized app in the same manner?
We've done some initial testing, and if you'd like, you can also talk to David sitting right there at the table, because we're looking to do some user studies around this. But yeah, a lot of it comes down to articulating it in different ways, and often it will do the wrong thing or not enough, right? So there's a version of that same video we do where we ask it to also speak the results, and sometimes it doesn't quite capture that idea, and so you only get what we saw in the video rather than also having the text-to-speech component. But the nice thing about it is now that we've added this editing capability, even if it gets it wrong the first time, you can at least go back and correct what it's trying to do. So it's kind of like Dr. Johnson mentioned, Copilot and all these other tools. You know, it's working with you within the app creation environment rather than you offloading all of the work to it. But as these models become more capable, we imagine that'll be even more the case that it'll get better and better at generating the app you want.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we go to the question in the room, I just want to say quickly to virtual attendees, please add your questions to the chat. That's where we're pulling them from. And to you, Becca.
I was wondering how you did the tuning for the large language model to make it generate your aptly code. Are you just using prompt tuning, or did you do actual training on like your own version of a model, or what was that process?
So what we're doing right now is we're doing prompt engineering, where we have a handful of example prompts, about 20, make this app, and here's what the code looks like. And then we use cosine similarity of embeddings to determine the order in which to show those prompts to the LLM. But one thing we are planning to explore is doing more fine-tuning, so we have a custom model that better understands the structure and semantics of App Inventor specifically, because we have certain semantics that don't make sense for Python, like where you can add a number to a string, for example, that looks like a number and it should reduce to a number. But yeah, those are all things we're looking to explore more.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, another question in the room.
Hi, my name is Mike from code.org. I was just thinking about how you're providing input through speech, and so a user or student of the platform could request really anything that they want, and with that kind of comes with the potential for something that we would hope a student wouldn't create, harmful content or something that's bullying or something that reinforces stereotypes or bias. And I was just curious, how you all have been thinking about those risks and mitigating them.
Sure, sure. So the main thing that we're looking at there is that a lot of the large language model providers also provide APIs for doing content moderation. And so we have the ability to, of course, pass all of the outputs through those moderation systems in order to understand specifically whether that output should be used or not. Of course, that doesn't stop anyone from just going into App Inventor today or any other programming language and just creating said app as well. But our hope is that by using, as people move towards using these generative AI models, that some of this moderation stuff we will get for free from the tool creators themselves. So,
Thank you.
but it is a hard problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the room? We have a few more minutes. All right, let me double check the virtual queue one more time. All right, it looks like we're good. Thank you so much. What a fascinating talk.
Thanks. And if you want to see demos later, just find me.